Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at @DeCinio and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another transfer talk. This is a transfer talk, but it's a catch-all. It's a catch-all. We're going to talk a little bit of Newcastle. We're going to talk the Newcastle aftermath, what's been said about Arteta's antics on the sideline, plus some transfer talk around Mudryk and the saga that it is with Chelsea coming in to hijack the deal. The sporting director from Shakhtar Donetsk being very vocal about going to Chelsea and trying to get the deal done with Todd Bowley, as well as links to Declan Rice. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know how you guys are feeling. I want to ask you guys a question, but it's a random question. I don't know why I felt like asking you guys this, but I was listening to some music when I was getting ready to do the show. Yes, I got ready for this. I know that this doesn't look like I'm getting ready, but I did. I tried. A for effort. So I was listening to Justin Timberlake 2020 Experience, and that's one of my favorite albums of all time. And I wanted to ask you guys, what's your favorite album of all time? I know it's like a really random question to ask, but I just wanted to know from your guys' perspective. So let me know in the comments what's your favorite album of all time. Just drop it in there. Could be fun. Want to see what your guys' taste in music is. You know, that always tells me if I can trust a person or not, is whether or not they have good music taste. You know what I mean? So yeah, let me know in the chat box what you guys think about that. You guys, I was not only on time, but I was early today. Early. So like, yeah, I'm feeling good about it. Today's show is going to be a lot of fun. We have so much to talk about. And then after the Man City match tonight, tomorrow, we're going to do a looking ahead type of show, because we need to look ahead to the next couple of games. We have a little bit of a break because of the FA Cup, but I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but everybody's going to be playing against each other. Everybody's playing against each other. I think Spurs play Manchester City like 2 times, like in very quick succession. We play Manchester City and Man United and Spurs. Chelsea play Man City tomorrow. There's a Manchester derby. So we'll know a lot about the title race and what our credentials truly are for that title race, or not really credentials, but is it going to be a 2-horse race or a 4-horse race? I feel like that's what we're going to learn in the next couple of weeks, because 8 points clear is amazing, but that can quickly be turned on its head if, you know, we don't perform, you know, or we don't get points in these next couple of games. And so we'll do a little bit of a kind of looking ahead, kind of predicting some score lines, best case scenarios, worst case scenarios. I was in a group chat today where somebody was saying we shouldn't lose any of these big games. And my thought process around it is a little bit more like, don't lose. Because I anticipate Arsenal, with Gabriel Jesus back, with maybe a couple of signings beyond these difficult fixtures, to be able to win games against the smaller teams quite easily. And so not losing the games against the big teams and keeping them from gaining points on us inevitably gives us, I think, an advantage moving into some easier fixtures in late February, early March. But let's not get too far into it. We'll do a whole show on that in a couple of days, because I'm a little bit nervous about it. I cannot lie. Honestly, I cannot lie. So see what you guys are saying. Crispy Rice says it's hard to pick one album. You gotta pick. Amira says, hey Jess, hey chat, hello to you as well. MC says Death Certificate by Ice Cube. Good choice. Boy says getting transfers in early could be potent in the derbies coming up, so we absolutely won't get our transfers done in a hurry. Diallo says, for me, it depends on the genre, but I'll go African Giant by Burna Boy. That's a good choice. Ian White says Dr. Dre, or Dre 2001, Eminem, MMLP, Music to be Murdered by Side 1 and 2, Jiggy's Blueprint. The Blueprint is definitely an important album for me, so I feel you. Rich says Mudryk in English means wise. In English means wise. Okay. And Jamie says Forest Hills Drive by J. Cole. Those are all really good choices. My favorite album of all time is probably, I have like 4 or 5, but if I just had to choose like off the top of my head, is probably Hard Knock Life Volume 2 by Jay-Z. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it though. There's 150 of you guys in here already, which is amazing. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into the Mudryk stuff. Okay, so this has been, so basically the situation is as such. We put in one bid, it was too low. We put in a second bid, it was also too low. Whether or not it was officially like rejected or not, I don't know, but the media makes it feel like it was too low and Shakhtar are not willing to go ahead and like sanction a deal with the money that we put down, which was something around 62 million pounds all in. So I don't know what the split is in terms of like the guaranteed fee plus the add-ons, but I feel like we're around 50 something in guaranteed fee and everything else is add-ons. And over the last couple of days, what has kind of come to the surface is interest in Mudryk from Chelsea and Shakhtar being open to listening to what Chelsea could offer. And there's been multiple reports from journalists that are closer to Chelsea than Arsenal. I think that's really important, saying that there's genuine interest there. And the Shakhtar Donetsk sporting director will be at the Manchester City-Chelsea match at Stamford Bridge tonight to hear what Bowley is willing to offer for Mudryk. And the feeling around it is that it's giving kind of like Rafinha vibes, where Chelsea know that the player really wants to go somewhere, but because financially they're in a position to put a certain amount down, they're going to put something down just in case the deal collapses, or to try to jump the queue. Depending on who you speak to, it's either to jump in front of Arsenal or to be there in case the deal collapses, you know? And so that puts Arsenal in a precarious, I think, position, because this is our number one target. We've been linked with Mudryk since the summer, and his fee or his value has jumped from like 30 million to 100 million off of the back of a couple of really good Champions League performances, which is what usually happens. If you look at the trajectory of Enzo Fernandez, it's quite similar. It's just, you know, I exist, people kind of know about me, then I have a couple of really good performances, and then all of a sudden the selling club decides that they want three figures, you know, or 100 million price tag. And so that's kind of where we're at with Mudryk. This has been echoed by Ben Jacobs, who for me tends to have quite a bit of information, but the information that he has on Arsenal sometimes isn't the best in terms of outcome. So he's quite positive on Arsenal, and his feelings around Arsenal and how they get their deals done and how they feel tend to be a little bit like, and then the player ends up going somewhere else or we don't get them. Like, he was very vocal about Tielemans. We never really firmed up our interest in Tielemans, even though he said that like we were going to go in for him over the summer, if you guys remember. Ben Jacobs also has good information on the side of Chelsea. So he may be right in the mix in terms of knowing what's going on with this deal. But a rule of thumb for me is if Ben Jacobs is confident that we'll get a deal done, I tend not to think that it's going to get done, because it never does when he's very much on the forefront of of knowing what's going on. But everything is kind of the same on the Chelsea side. Nobody really is saying that they feel confident they can get a deal done, but there is interest there. The Arsenal side is direct talks are still happening, but Arsenal's valuation of Mudryk is what we have offered, and like we're not getting into a bidding war because this is what he's worth in this market based on like how where Cody Gakpo is, you know, how much, you know, he went for and things like that. And they're not necessarily worried about Chelsea's interest, but they're also willing to walk away. And Ben Jacobs wrote all about it. And I think some of the information was quite good, and, you know, is something that people should read about. Multiple clubs can be in for a player at the same time. Like, just because Arsenal are interested in Mudryk does not mean other clubs cannot be interested in him. The key, I think, to this, where if you think back to how things ended up with Rafinha, he wanted to leave Leeds. Leeds wanted a certain amount, and they wanted quite a bit up front. They wanted a big fee up front, guaranteed, because a lot of clubs that don't have a lot of money tend to want to break down payments into small little payments. And clubs that are not quite ready to sell the player, or kind of like, well, damn, we didn't really get our money's worth out of this player yet, or we're not really ready to let him go, sometimes will test the buying clubs by saying like, well, I'll take 70 million, but I want 55 of it up front. And that's essentially what happened with Rafinha. Leeds wanted a huge amount up front. And I think they felt a little bit like, damn, Barcelona, you're just going to run in here and take our player, right? And Rafinha was very bold, and Deco was quite bold going out in the summer and saying that Rafinha was desperate to go to Barcelona. And what ended up happening is, in order to move Barcelona along and get them to go ahead and put in an offer or set a price to a place where Leeds would feel comfortable to sell him, they needed other clubs to come in with viable offers. Arsenal put in an offer that they were encouraged by Deco, and I think George Mendes on this, and or maybe just Deco himself. And we were not willing to put up enough up front. Chelsea were willing to put up a lot up front. And so Leeds and Chelsea, remember when Ornstein came out with this exclusive, that they had agreed a deal with Leeds had agreed a deal with Chelsea for a certain amount of money, and they may or may not have had personal terms agreed. Now, like, personal terms can be as loose or as specific depending on the player and the situation, but it was always known that Rafinha wanted to go to Barcelona, and he wasn't going to do anything but go there. And that's kind of where we're at with this situation. It's not as like out there as that one was, but Mudryk wants to come to Arsenal. Arsenal's bid is well below the valuation that Shakhtar would want, or the money up front, because the structuring of the deal is quite important for Shakhtar. So it's in Shakhtar's best interest to go to Chelsea and try to agree a fee that is closer to what they're willing to accept, to push Arsenal along and say, this is the benchmark, you need to get closer to this in order for us to sell him to you. Now, the other part of this that makes it more interesting, especially I think from a Chelsea perspective and a rival perspective, is can Chelsea turn Mudryk's head? Is he so hell-bent on coming to Arsenal that it doesn't really matter what Chelsea are willing to offer? I don't know, because I don't know Mudryk, and I've known many a player to want to come to Arsenal and to work for Arsenal and then turn right around and sign for somebody else. We've seen it so many times before. So I'm not really bought into the idea that if Arsenal were not to up their bid, that in an attempt to just get out of Shakhtar and to get paid a certain amount of money and to be in the Premier League, that he wouldn't just go to the blue side of London and play for Chelsea. So that's kind of what we're contending with. The question, I guess, for you guys from me is, should Arsenal just pay anything? Should Arsenal just pay the fee that Shakhtar want? Should Arsenal just get it done? That's my question to you. That's the question on socials. That is the debate, because while we're in a position where we desperately need backup, we need options, we need more quality on the bench and on the pitch for Arsenal to really make a push for the title, and just in general, we just need it anyway. But should Arsenal just cough up the money? I'm seeing a lot of, well, it's not our money, so why does it matter? Well, it matters because deals like this sometimes can hinder us in the long term in terms of what we want to do recruitment wise in the future. So a lot of Arsenal fans want a really good midfielder, or down the line, we may want a striker or another center back or something like that. Players like this, if you spend too much money on them and you can't move them, they can stop you from doing other deals in the future. Now, I think that's also coupled with bad business over the years. Like, if you do a lot of bad business, a multitude of players on bad contracts, that tends to be the reason why you're not able to move on other deals in the future. But I still think there's a precedent that needs to be set by Arsenal, that we're not just going to pay whatever you want, especially if, I mean, 62 million pounds for a player that has less than 30 appearances for Shakhtar, that plays in the Ukrainian league, I think, and is 21 years old, is more than fair. 62 million. That's a lot for a player of the caliber that he is, right? And that's not to say that he can't become world class and a Ballon d'Or winner and all this kind of stuff, but to go up to, or 20 million above that, I do feel like is a lot, and once you start getting your pants pulled down, most clubs start to think that you're not good at negotiating. There's a lot of Arsenal fans over the years that have been really frustrated by Arsenal's inability to get good deals in the market. So over the years, we've seen the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool be able to pull off really good deals at 30 million pounds, 40 million pounds, 25 million pounds. But that's because they've set a precedent within their club that they won't have their pants pulled down. So what happens is you walk away from certain deals. An example of that for me that stands out to me because it's so it's so like something that we saw like right now is Cucurella to Chelsea. Manchester City spent a long time working on that deal for Cucurella over the summer, weeks upon weeks upon weeks. Zinchenko was coming to us. They needed another left back, whatever. So they wanted Cucurella, and Brighton wanted 50, 60 million for him. And their valuation for Cucurella at that point was about 30 million. Manchester City walked away. Chelsea swooped in and bought him for like 60 million. And I don't think you can say that he's looked like a 60 million pound left back at the moment. That's not to say that he won't get there, but in the short term, Manchester City is still probably the best team in the league. So they are in a position to just kind of walk away from certain deals. I am afraid of Arsenal just going out there and being desperate, because also Shakhtar know that we really want him and we're in a position where we need players in. So I think it's important to like set a precedent that you won't have your pants pulled down, but also be willing to spend big money on good, talented players, which 62 million for a player of Mudryk's caliber for me is wanting to spend good money on good talent. It doesn't signal to me that Arsenal are cheap and don't want to invest in the squad. And there's a big difference between not wanting to spend money on the squad and being cheap, and being smart and not having your pants pulled down. And I think some Arsenal fans are conflating the two and saying, just spend the money. We need the player. The Cronkies are always cheap and don't spend money, when we just had like 3 summers in a row, even through a pandemic, where they spent probably the most or were one of the highest spenders in Europe. So I think there's a big difference between that. And what's the point in which Arsenal walk away? Arsenal, I do think, need to have a cutoff on where they're willing to walk away. Do I think that the deal is like dead? No. Arsenal are still in direct talks with Shakhtar, but I also think they don't want to be too desperate. They want to show that they're willing to move on, because this is not the only thing that matters to Arsenal. So there's that. Kelly says 62 million is a good deal. Exactly. For me, that's more like, that is for me wanting to spend big. I mean, let's think about it. Under Arteta, the biggest fee that we've paid is Ben White at 50 million. So spending 62 million on a player that's relatively unproven, to me, is showing that you want to spend good money on good players. Like, it's just kind of like, how much are you willing to spend? Ayonle says, if Shakhtar still insists on 80 to 100 million, they can keep him, get Felix instead. And Tielemans, I have given up on the Partey backup till the summer. Diallo says, also, what we do this window will have a massive effect on what we do during the summer. Move wisely and focus on agreed plans, which has worked masterfully so far. I mean, as much as people want to complain about the Cronkies and Arsenal and Edu and our recruitment, and I've been one of them over the last couple of years, what they have done has gotten us to this point. So they've spent smart, and I don't think that means that we can we should never spend big money on players, but 62 million for a player like Mudryk is spending big on good players. So I think it's important to like remember that. And yes, like I saw a comment about Terrence Tibbs is saying Mudryk proved himself in the Champions League. He proved himself, but still, like, do a couple of Champions League performances really mean that we should spend more than what the market actually indicates his value is worth? I'm not sure. 62 million for a player that was worth 30 million before the season started. I don't think you jump from 30 to 100 after 3 games, no matter how good those games were, if that makes sense. So Arsenal going from, because Arsenal did offer like 30 something million in the summer and it got rejected, just like Brentford and somebody else also offered something around there, maybe Everton. And he's played a couple of games and now we're offering 60. So I do think that our bid reflects the proving himself in the Champions League. But to say he's gone from 30 to 100 when like players of that quality are like Mbappe's, like they go for over 100 million. Do you know what I mean? And like, can we really say that Mudryk is like on that level? I'm not sure. Like you could, even if you bought Leroy Sané at this point, who is a proven, probably top player, not world class, but a top player in his position that's proven and we know would slot straight into our team, would probably only cost you like 60 million. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to say like he should be gone from 30 to 70 or a 30 70 he should have went 70 more million from 3 or 4 appearances. I think that's, I mean, he didn't even go to the World Cup, so you can't even say that he also had World Cup appearances. Do you know what I mean? Keenan says, is he really better than Ferran Torres, who actually played decently in the Prem? I don't know, but there's also a reason why Arsenal are going after Mudryk versus Ferran Torres. It could be wages. It can be moldability, if that's even a word, being able to mold a player into what you really want them to be, whatever, or just that sheer pace. And you can't teach pace, so that there is definitely that. I think he has a higher ceiling than Ferran Torres, and that's what we're paying. That is the difference between paying what he's probably worth, which is probably 30 to 40 million, and spending 30 million over that. That's where the paying for his, future is. But yeah, it's definitely about paying for what he'll be potentially in the future. But Ferran Torres, I don't know if he's better than him at the moment, but I do think he has a higher ceiling, and that's what we're paying for, if that makes sense. Let's see. Amira says, overpaying would set a precedent for how other clubs would sell to us and buy from us. They'll see us as pushovers and constantly underbid for our players like they already do. Be reasonable. I think a lot of you guys are being quite reasonable. And I do see some people that are like, we have to get this player, but it's like, at what cost? You know what I mean? I also think that Arsenal have alternative options that they're willing to go for, but they're also probably calm. And I think Mudryk is so important in this. Is he so hell-bent on going to Arsenal that it doesn't really matter? Because the truth, like, clubs will try to do it to you, but you have to have so many different people have to be aligned. The buying club, the selling club, the agent, and the player, they all have to agree. It can't just be, both clubs and the agent, they agree and they can just send you wherever you want, they want you to go. It doesn't happen like that. Even though some agents can coerce you or kind of like push you into a certain direction, ultimately players have agency over themselves. And so if Mudryk is hell-bent on going to Arsenal, he really can stop all of this from happening. And there is also the idea, and what's also, this has been intimated by several different sources, including Chelsea sources, is that even though that there's interest from Chelsea, they also know that Arsenal are so far along in this deal, and Mudryk's want is to go to Arsenal, that this is more just in case the deal falls apart. But players can be turned, so I'm not saying it's 100%. Let's see. What are you guys saying? I'm just going back a little bit. Sony says, would be surprised if Mudryk is the only option that Edu and Arteta is looking at. He's number one target, but we have seen them doing things behind the scenes. What I'll also say is that I do think that there's an element of lining up other targets, but I don't think to this point I've seen Arsenal lose out on their number one target, but like one time, and that was a really specific example for a very specific reason. We would have gotten Lisandro Martinez had Ajax or Manchester United not come in, but it's really hard to compete with somebody's old manager who they have a good relationship with, and this, that, and the other. And our bid was a little bit too low. So I would say that mostly Arsenal can get their number one target, but if they don't, they usually have a really good number two target lined up. And we move so quickly on Zinchenko that I don't think very many of us really think about Lisandro Martinez like that. So hopefully Arsenal, because this is so imperative, like we have got to get another player in. I cannot imagine that they don't have a number two option that's ready to go like that. There's 400 of you guys in here right now, and that's actually blowing my mind. Please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're new, make sure you subscribe if you like the content, and let me know what your favorite album is, because we did that at the top of the show. Alex B says CL money is on the way next year, and if it means more of a title push, it's well worth it. Yeah, I get what you're saying with that, but do you think that we should spend 85 million on a relatively newish player, that's not really worth that just because of the title push? Let me ask you guys this. Does buying Mudryk guarantee we win the title? That's my question. Does buying Mudryk guarantee Arsenal win the title? And if I spelled guarantee wrong, because I've never spelled it right in my whole life, you know what I mean? That is so wrong. Is that how you spell it? Hold on. You guys, is that how you spell guarantee? Oh my God, I feel so stupid. Whatever. You guys know what I mean. Does buying Mudryk guarantee Arsenal win the title? Is that how you spell it? Oh, so dumb. But that's what I want to know, because like saying we'll just spend the money because we're in the title push, like he doesn't guarantee it. So I still don't think that that's a good reason. Braff Sports JA says guarantee. I think I spelled it. Oh, you know what I missed? The other A. It looked wrong. When you spell something and you're like, that's so wrong. Whatever. You guys know what I'm saying. Who cares? I'm not here to spell. The Sheikh AFC says Arteta will be so mad if we don't get the players he wants in this window. That is true. That's true. That is 100% true. And I think the way that the Newcastle game kind of unfolded, and Arteta did not sub anybody except for Tomiyasu and for Ben White. No Vieira. Yes, I'm drinking. And what? No Vieira, no anybody else came on. I mean, we don't have any other options. Do you know what I mean? So I can kind of understand, but I think he makes it a point to show people that I don't have the options. Like, I don't got the people. And so they kind of have to back Mikel Arteta. They've backed him well, but I haven't seen the next step for the Kroenkes to kind of, for us to, I think, feel like they're doing a good job is to not just back him in the summer, but to back him when something is on the line. Last season, they didn't do it. We fell short. They can't do it again, and we don't know when's the next time we're going to be in this situation again. So they have to push. And I think if you give Arteta 2 players now in the January transfer window and we don't get the title, but we finish second, I think everybody will look at the Kroenkes and say you tried. You know what I mean? But if you don't do it and we finish second or third or fall into a top 4 race, I think it's just going to be the Kroenkes don't give a shit again. And they've done so well to kind of bring the fan base back around. But I think that at a club like this, when you're in January and you have an opportunity to do this, you have to do something, but not to any cost. That I have to say that I don't think to any cost. Shagul says exactly, they need to at least try. Diallo says, remember, we are fighting Pep and Haaland. Nothing guarantees winning the league against those two and KDB. Fair enough. Clev and Den says, Chelsea don't really need him. They're just reactive. I disagree. I think Chelsea do need to reinvent their front line. Aubameyang hasn't worked. Shock. You know, could have told you that. But in terms of like their wing options, they have Sterling. They got Sterling and they have Sterling. You know, Hakim Ziyech, he did well in the World Cup, but we know that he's not a long-term option for them. Pulisic is made out of breadsticks and is really inconsistent. So they do need wingers. And he could go and start for them. You know what I mean? Because he probably is a better option. If that's really what Graham Potter wants, then he could come straight in and start for them. You never really know. So I do think that Chelsea do need him. They just don't have the obvious spot for him because there's so many players that can play in those positions, but they need to reinvent their front line. And they have Nkunku coming in as well. And XG says Mudryk knows Arsenal won't let him down, but if they do, then he goes to Chelsea. Fair enough. Saida says there should be context in all of this. If the quality between the alternative options to Mudryk are vast, then I say just add a couple more millions and pay the fee for Arteta's first choice. So I think that's really what it comes down to as well, is that there's still an opportunity for Arsenal to up their bid. Again, they're in constant negotiations, constant talks, like nothing is really broken down. Nobody has walked away from the deal as of yet. And so I do think we have to give the club an opportunity to do that. But I also don't think they want to be pressured into going. The longer this goes on, I think it depends on how you think about it. I think it could play into Arsenal's hands if they don't get into a bidding war. And maybe Chelsea don't offer that much more. Maybe Chelsea offer around the same amount that we've offered. Because Chelsea are also in a position where I think, you know, they went in for the Enzo Fernandez and everybody thought that they were going to go in and spend 120 million and they turned around and offered 85, you know? So I don't think it's a guarantee that Chelsea go in and overspend or try to overpay for Mudryk. So we have to see what they come up with. And then if Arsenal are willing to up their bid a little bit to compete with that, maybe we just have to see. But if what it is just to add maybe 5 more million or 7 more million, then yeah, they should probably do it, but not 20 million. That's insanity to me. There's 430 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna take a sip. You know what I'm saying? You guys know I'm a lush. Okay, so let's see. What are you guys saying? Ultima Spell says improve the chances. No, 100%, because we need to vary our attacking style. Most of you guys said no, it doesn't guarantee it. And that's, for me, it's like, if you told me that Mudryk guarantees the Premier League, then I'm like, spend whatever. But if it doesn't, then you have to be smart, because there's still a chance that you don't win it, and you don't want to spoil the future for short-term gain that's not guaranteed, if that makes sense. So yeah, make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. You know what I'm saying? Yami says, just drinking on the stream, how dare you? I do it all the time, y'all. Like, this is my happy time. This is my fun time. Like, this is a party for me. So I don't know if you guys think it's unprofessional or something, but like, we're just friends here. You know what I mean? Yo-Yo says, Ralph rumored Neto Mudryk, who would be the fourth choice. In terms of the winger options, I don't know. Like, Ferran Torres probably, going for Joao Felix on a loan. I think those things are kind of in play here. Breezy says Shakhtar are pulling our pants down, to be honest. I think we are going up to a fee that is not what he's worth. I think 60 million is definitely like, okay, we'll play with you guys a little bit, right? We also offered like 55 million for Rafinha, but I remember distinctly within that deal was that we were willing to offer the 55 million. I know that Rafinha was going somewhere else, but we're willing to offer the 55 million, but we weren't willing to offer so much up front. And I think that's more of the issue, is that Shakhtar want a lot up front. Now, Chelsea could come in and say, well, we're willing to give you the 62 million, but we'll give you 55 million up front. and maybe Arsenal were not willing to give 55 million up front. That could be the difference here. So yeah, we just have to see what happens, but we'll know more. You know, I kind of anticipate this going, you guys, is that tomorrow we will see something like Shakhtar have agreed of a deal with Chelsea, you know, and they will come to an agreement on a fee, and then it'll be up to Arsenal if they are willing to come back. You know, that's what I anticipate happening, because that is the game that Shakhtar are playing at. So, but if we don't come back and we walk away, there is a chance that Mudryk will just say, you know what, I want out anyway. Like, I'm desperate to leave, so I'll just go to Chelsea. So there's still that chance, guys. So yeah, but we'll see what happens with all of that. Moving on to something else that stood out to me this morning was the inevitable links to Declan Rice. Now, this is somebody who's like desperate to go to Chelsea, right? But again, like it's kind of always the same thing, where if the club that you want to go to does not come in for you, or whatever, they're not in the right circumstance to bring you in, or they don't, you know, whatever, like Declan Rice is like, the whole situation with Declan Rice is that he wants to go to Chelsea, but he wants to play Champions League. If Chelsea finish 8th and they don't have Champions League, does Declan Rice wait another season and wait for them to get into Champions League? Or does he just go to Chelsea while they're kind of figuring out what they're doing? Or does he ditch those plans and go somewhere else that has Champions League football? That is the question. And so there are some little links that, you know, Arsenal are interested in Declan Rice. I know that he has 1 year left on his deal. Arsenal and Chelsea will definitely be in the race for Declan Rice in the summer. West Ham have resigned to losing him for 70 to 75 million pounds. He wants Champions League football and wants to stay in London. So that pretty much like is Arsenal or Chelsea. I cannot see him in a Spurs kit. I can't see it personally. So I think it's between both the two clubs. Both teams, I think, have a spot for a new midfielder. We kind of discussed on this channel multiple times, like, what is that midfielder? What is the profile? How do we get somebody who's similar to Partey? Do we need somebody who's similar to Partey? Is Declan Rice good enough? We've spoken about those things, but Arsenal, I think it would be obvious that they'd be interested in him, because there's only a certain amount of like midfielders out there that are options to the level of what Arsenal would need at this point. Champions League football means we don't need to be bringing in young players that need a lot of development. Like, that's what you do when you're in the Europa League. And we'll still do some of that. Like Fabio Vieira is a little bit of that right now. But we have an academy that does that for us on a regular basis. When you get into Champions League, you need players that can step in and get you through the group stages of the Champions League, and also be able to contribute in the Premier League and Champions League beyond that. And Arsenal have not built a squad for that just yet. We've been a Europa League side for so long that I do think Arsenal fans have an idea that, like, if you're not going to start, we should not have to spend a lot of money on you. Players that do not start for Arsenal should be cut price deals or loans, or older players that are never going to get in the squad, or younger players that are developing. That's not how it works when you get further along. And I think we also had a little bit of that under Arsene, because we were penny pinching so badly towards the end of his tenure. But for Arsenal to actually be a team that maintains their Champions League spot, competes in the Champions League, and also competes for the Premier League, you cannot expect to have academy kids behind your starters and El Nenis behind your starters. It's not going to work. And so there's only a certain amount of midfielders that you can bring in that can be that level for us. And Declan Rice falls into that for a lot of Arsenal fans, and maybe even for Arsenal. I'm not surprised that this link is here, especially with 1 year left on his deal. It's just a matter of, again, quite similarly to Mudryk, would he be willing to ditch the dreams of going to his dream club, which is Chelsea, to go to Arsenal, or does he wait it out? There's still a chance that Chelsea may make it into the Champions League, but I feel like it's a little bit far away from them right now. And so it's just a matter of like what happens until the end of the season. But I don't know, you guys. You guys know I'm not sold on Basmati. you guys know I'm not sold on Basmati. Like, I'm really not. And my reasoning for that is because I don't know what position he actually will fill. As a lone six in Arsenal system, not sure. I think he's more would be a double pivot for us, and we don't play like that anymore. And is he really a box to box 8? Like, remember, okay, so against Newcastle, something that stood out to me that was kind of frustrating was xhaka was limited in those wide positions, and because Newcastle were so good defensively and weren't getting moved around as much as some of the other teams that we see, he does not have the ability to dribble and create space in that way. So when he gets into wide positions, he has to have players to combine with. And if the players are kind of like in positions where they can't be reached, he can't create that space for himself. And he was also in some good shooting positions and wasn't able to sort his feet out. And I think what Arsenal really need is a well-rounded midfielder that can kind of go back box to box and do good things in both boxes, can defend, be in a double pivot with Partey in certain parts of the game state, but in the final third has the dribbling ability, has the ball progression, has the passing, has this and that. Those types of players cost a lot of money. I'm just not sure if that's Declan Rice at this point. Can he become that? Maybe. Maybe, I mean, he's young enough to be molded. Thomas Partey was not the player that he is now when he first came to Arsenal. Xhaka has improved. A lot of the players under Arteta has improved. But to spend 70 million on a player that needs a lot of molding, maybe it doesn't really sit right with me. Maybe I can't see it though, but I don't know. You know what I mean? I guess somebody that would probably be more of that is who Jabulo, sorry if I'm getting that wrong, is saying, why aren't we trying for Frankie de Jong? Now, I think Frankie de Jong is on his way to Manchester United. I think it's been delayed, but it will happen. But that is more of the player that I think we're describing versus Declan Rice. But maybe I'm just, I don't know. Maybe I can't see it. But I don't. Geo the Best says Partey was an 8 that was molded into a 6. Rice was a center back molded to a 6. So we can't replace him. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying there. Like Partey had the 8 ability within his locker already, so you just had to give him some of the 6 stuff, whereas Rice was more of a center back first, and so he doesn't have those abilities and all that kind of stuff. So I understand that. John Doe says Rice's main jobs as a 6 is to stop transitions. His profile fits the mold. But what about what Thomas Partey does on the ball? I know it's not as prevalent as it was last season. We do not rely upon Thomas Partey to do a lot of the playmaking from deep that we required last season. Like our literal funnel was Thomas Partey to Odegaard to Saka. Now we do a little bit of different. Obviously, Zinchenko comes into midfield and acts as like another playmaker from deep. So I understand that. And Thomas Partey does stop a lot of the transitions, but I wonder about what Rice can do on the ball. Does he have the pass in between the lines? Does he have, the ability? I know he has the ability to switch it from side to side, but I'm not quite seeing the same level of technical ability. And then there's also the times where Thomas Partey evades pressure as well by dropping the shoulder and stuff. I don't see that with Rice, but maybe we don't need that because we have so much possession now that we're in a different position. But because I've heard that said, but I don't know. John Doe says as a 6 has his main role. Every other is advantage that can be played around. Let's see. Keenan says Gio is spot on. The number 6 in our system should be a converted 8. Maybe not a center back turned 6. Fair enough. Let's see. Johnny Love says I'd throw 70 million down for Rice over Mudryk any day. Granted, not exactly the same position. It's not the same position at all. But I kind of hear what you're saying. Maybe you're saying that midfield is more important. Or maybe Declan Rice is more of an established player that we know we're going to get from him. But we need a winger, I think, more in this window than we need a midfielder, because if the goals dry up, we're done. And I do think that you saw in the Newcastle game, which granted, we're not going to play against a lot of nasty, mid to low blocks like that, and we're not going to play against those types of teams all the time. But in the event where we need to change the game and we need a goal, we need somebody that can come off of the bench and do it. And right now with ESR's fitness issues, we don't quite have that. So we need another player to come in. And that's where Mudryk, for me, becomes more important than a midfielder, even though we kind of know in the back of our minds that a couple of injuries in midfield will also put us in a stressful situation. Roman Van Staden says Rice was bullied by Saka, and for CDM, that's unacceptable. The one thing I will say about players is when they're unhappy and they're not in a place where they really want to be, they tend to not play to the best of their ability. So I think Declan Rice was really, really good last season, but I think he wanted to move this past summer. West Ham are not playing well. They look like they're disjointed, like they don't believe in what maybe David Moyes is putting out there anymore. And so he wants that change. And sometimes players just mentally clock out, and that also affects what you do on the pitch. And so I wouldn't read too much into that. Yes, Saka bullied him, but I would say that if he got a move and went somewhere else and was happy, we'd probably see the Declan Rice of last season, even though he's not really my cup of tea. Crispy Rice says Rice is good at distribution. Fair enough. Let's see. Let's see. Andre says, I feel Tielemans offers solid 8 cover, and getting him for free is a great option. But it just depends on, like, what are we looking for in a midfielder? Is it a backup to Thomas Partey, or is it another number 8 that can replace Xhaka? I didn't know this until I saw this clip came up from Ars blog, but I thought El Neni was leaving for free this summer, but he did have a clause that could like be activated to extend his contract for another season. I am a little bit worried that Arsenal are going to take advantage of that and El Neni will stay another season. And maybe they will go after somebody that can replace Xhaka. I don't know, or give good competition to Xhaka. I don't know. So we'll see what happens with that. A cow says Rice is far better than El Neni. It's a very low bar, though. I mean, most players are better than El Neni, you know. But I get what you're saying. Richie Rabbit says we should be able to do better than Rice for what he'll cost. It also depends on who's out there, though, Richie Rabbit. Like, the biggest thing is supply and demand, what's out there. If there was tons of players that could do what Rice and those types of players could do, then the price for those players would go down. You know what I mean? But I think a well-rounded midfielder that's coming into their prime, that's proven, is always going to cost a lot more. And so if you can name me 4 or 5 players that can do it, then, you know, you're better than me. But I really can't think of a lot of players that fit in that category that I know for sure could do it. So yeah. Let's see. Gio says, I saw Gio said something. Gio the Best says we need 2 6s and an 8 at least, Jess. I don't think we need 2 6s now. Now hold on. Do we need 2 6s? No. It depends on where you got, like, where does the club see Emile Smith Rowe? What is the track for Vieira? Like, what are we doing? Because if Emile Smith Rowe and Vieira are 8s, then maybe we only need one. Like, we need an 8 and a 6. I do think we need an 8 and a 6, but what is the priority? You know, I don't know. I feel like the priority is maybe a player that Rice is not a 6 to me. He's not. So I don't know. If you think of him as a 6, then that's the priority for Arsenal. But we were also really linked with Tielemans. But was Tielemans just a foil because we didn't know if Xhaka could do the goal scoring? I don't know. To be honest, midfield, the progression of midfield for Arsenal is really a mystery. Honestly, it's a mystery at this point because we did Tielemans, but Tielemans we didn't follow through with it. But I think he was coming in to do Xhaka's job. But because Xhaka started scoring goals, we decided we didn't need him anymore. And there's also reports that his wage demands were astronomical. And so maybe that was the priority. But we were also linked with Danilo, who now we know there's been an official offer that came through for Danilo from Monaco, which I kind of figured would be the option for him. He needs a move before his big move, but we're not going for a DM. The only time we really tried to pull the trigger on the DM was when El Neni got injured. And so it's a mystery, really, what Arsenal's priority and how they envision this midfield looking beyond Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka, who are both in their 30s and are very difficult to replace. To be honest, like, as much as you may not like Xhaka, he's hard to replace because he does pretty good in the attack in one box, and in the other box he's reliable. And there's not a lot of players who could do it with his type of fitness, his intelligence, his passing levels. Like, the only thing that he doesn't have is the ability to dribble. That's really what he doesn't have. He does not have the ability to escape pressure when we need more than a pass in combination. That's what he doesn't have. And so that's what that type of player would need to have. But I also don't think it's okay for them not to be able to defend. So it's a tough ask. It really is. There's 414 of you guys in here. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. I can't believe so many people are in here. It's so amazing. I'm like, now I'm feeling a little bit like, should I drink? Should I not? But I am. Sorry. All right. I don't want to scare new people off. Okay. Jermaine Arsenal Francis says, I see one player that I think could come off the bench and make a difference. Benrahma from West Ham. Paying 88 million for Mudryk is not worth it. Do you think so? Do you think Benrahma, like, to be honest, I thought about this the other day. I think he's relatively been a flop at West Ham. First of all, I thought it was a weird move because I thought Benrahma needed to go to a team that was more progressive and played more attacking football. And it's not that Moyes doesn't know how to coach an attack. It's just they tend to be a little bit more industrial with the way that they play. Any attacker or flair player that goes to West Ham, I just know they're making a bad decision. And that's why when Paqueta went there, I was like, it's not going to work out. Like, you're not going to unlock it for them. That's not the way Moyes plays. And so for me, Benrahma's been relatively like a flop. I don't think he has the explosiveness or the running behind because, like, we have enough players that can play in front of the ball. We don't have many players that can play beyond. And so Benrahma is not a fit for me, but he is a talented player. I just don't see him in that role for us. So yeah, Crispy Rice says Xhaka is our Iron Man, Mr. Reliable. Let's see. Vinicius says Lucas Paqueta is better than Xhaka. People were saying that Lucas Paqueta was better than Odegaard, and that was a terrible take. I don't want you to go down that same route. Paqueta is probably a more flair and has more technical ability than Xhaka in terms of dribbling. But what he can do, like, defensively, does he have the same legs? Does he have the same footballing IQ? No. I think Paqueta is better than Xhaka in one part of the way that he plays and not the rest. And so that doesn't make you a better player. So, like, when you compare players and you say defense, fitness, passing, dribbling, shooting, that kind of stuff, Paqueta is probably only better than Xhaka in like maybe one or two categories. Overall, I do think Xhaka is a better midfielder than Paqueta, even though if you play a specific system and you play with the number 10, Paqueta will be a better number 10 than Xhaka. But, what do I know? No West Ham players, but maybe Declan Rice, if you really do like him, get into our team at this point. Let's see. And I get that, put Paqueta in a better team and he'll cook, but I don't know if Arsenal need to, because also the way that we play on the left-hand side, and this is what makes me think that player still needs to be able to get their ass back and defend, is because the way that we play on that left-hand side requires the left back to be out of position, and sometimes the left-sided center mid has to cover that position. And so the last thing you want to do is bring in a number 10 that can kind of play as an 8 and think that they're going to cover Zinchenko or they're going to cover Tierney. It's not going to happen. And so I think that's why that player, like, if Paqueta wanted to play on the right, maybe you can make a an argument to why you would want him to play versus Odegaard because he does this and that and the third. But in terms of the left side of center mid and the way that group operates, xhaka is perfect for it right now, even though he has some flaws or things missing from his game, because the left side of center mid has got to drop in next to Thomas Partey, has to cover Zinchenko. You know, it's a really difficult position to do. It's very specific. You know, so there's Declan Rice could do it in terms of getting back and defending and having the engine. He has all those things, but I wonder about what he's going to do when he gets into the box. This is the player that I think we missed out on, and that was Bruno Guimaraes. I think he would have been perfect at it, but it's a loss now. There's 425 of you guys in here, so like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll keep going because there's more stuff I wanted to talk about before we get out of here. So yeah, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Lucas says, would you rather sign one Rice for 80 million or two Tielemans, Locatelli type midfielders? I would say I'd go for quality over quantity. And even though I do think Tielemans is a good player and Locatelli is probably a decent player as well, I'd rather get the one player for the 80 million. That's what I would go with. Let's see. A cow says most of these players are overhyped. Guimaraes was not great last Tuesday, not better than any of our midfielders. You could say that, but I also think Newcastle set out with a certain plan that was effective, but also did not require Bruno Guimaraes or any of their players to show anything beyond being able to defend in a deep block and then fall on the ground and try to get fouls and time waste. They didn't even try to attack us. They didn't even really try to score goals. Do you know what I mean? And so I don't think what Bruno Guimaraes did against us is indicative of what he is as a player outside of the top six or outside of the traditional big six. I think he's probably the best midfielder outside of that group. Better than Ruben Neves, better than Declan Rice. I just, if you watch him play, he can do it all. And those types of midfielders are so hard to come by because they're usually really good in attack, but not good going back. They're usually are really good at sweeping things up, but they can't pass or find a ball in between the lines or shoot. You know what I mean? And so him being able to kind of do all of it, I do think makes him unique. But if you don't rate him, I get that. But I wouldn't say what any of those Newcastle players did against us, except for the players in that back line. I would not even that's not indicative of what kind of players they are for me. Diallo says, Bruno G is a top player and clearly a big miss, but his saltiness has now made me hate him. Fair enough. Let's see. Yeah, Guimaraes, but it is what it is, you guys. Like, we haven't got him, and we'll see if there's another player that can step into that role, you know, for Arsenal moving forward. Now, the last thing that I kind of wanted to just touch on was the aftermath of the Newcastle game and what was said in the media post that and how you guys feel about it. I do think that there's always a big deal made anytime Arsenal drop points, and I think it's just because they don't get to talk about us as much as they are used to. Like, we've been so poor for so long that it was like every week there was something going on with Arsenal, but now that it's few and far between, even a draw feels like a loss. And I think that is an indication of how far we've come, but how desperate also the media are to paint this big crack or crumble that's about to come. And also there's always this like hyper focus on Arteta and what he does on the sideline. Who really cares what he's doing on the sideline? I know that people find it annoying, and I understand that, but like the narrative of he needs to calm that down because it's going to translate to the players and all this kind of stuff, I don't actually believe that. I don't believe that it's translating to the players and his nervousness or his inability to keep his cool, because I don't think that that's really what it is. I do think Arteta wants the team to have somewhat of a us versus them siege mentality. And so anything that happens to one of our players or happens that is even marginally against us, he wants to make sure that it feels like they don't want us to win. You know, they're against us. You know, we need to go at them. It's us versus them. And I like that mentality. I think that that's good for a team and it pushes a team forward versus like, oh, that's going to be like an issue or the players are going to get nervous. Because I don't think the players were nervous or anything or sense that. I think we didn't have a player to come off of the bench. Newcastle did a good job of defending, and it was two teams that really nullified each other, and it was just a draw. Before the game started, and I looked at all the statistics and all that kind of stuff about how their games have gone, our games have gone. I said, this smells like a draw. It just does, because of the way that they're going to come and play and the way that we play. And we'll probably have one or two opportunities. We don't put them away, then it's a draw because they're not going to score. They're not going to score. And that's exactly what happened. And they made a huge deal out of it. And how Arteta is on the sideline. If it's annoying, just say it annoys you. Because I think that that's when I see other teams' managers doing that, like Klopp or whatever, I'm like, oh, they annoy the crap out of me. It's so annoying. But do I actually sit there and think that, like, oh, that's going to affect the players? The players are going to crumble because Arteta's not keeping his cool. He's showing them that he's going to kick every ball with them. He's going to take every foul that doesn't go in our way personal. I think that that creates a siege mentality, and you need that in a title race. You don't need, okay, I'm just going to sit on the sideline and twiddle my thumbs, because that's what's going to make the media feel comfortable. And there's also this kind of thing where Arteta, when he first came in, there's a lot of people that said that he was arrogant. When he first came in, the media painted Arteta as this young manager that needs to sit down, shut up, because he hasn't done it, and he needs to be humble and not arrogant. The thing that I don't like about that is that when you're at a big club, you cannot be humble. A big club manager is not humble, doesn't sit there, grin and take it, doesn't wait their turn, doesn't wait for somebody to tell them that they're great, because that transmits to the club, that transmits to the team, that transmits to the fans. Nobody wants to see that. And that's a big reason why a lot of Chelsea fans that I've spoken to don't rate Graham Potter, is because he has not come in with a big, like, club manager bravado. Like, he doesn't emanate that. And that does come off arrogant. Do any of the big six managers feel like they're not arrogant? Pep, Klopp, Conte. They're all arrogant. Arteta cannot come in and wait, you know what I mean, until he's won things, or until the media feels like it's credible for him to do it, to start acting like a big club manager. Big club managers create siege mentalities. They're up on the touchline. They're behind their players. And yeah, sometimes it's annoying, especially if that's not your manager. But personally, as an Arsenal fan, I fucking love it. I love it. Sorry. I love it. I love Arteta going at people. I like him, believing that we deserve more than what we got in a game. And no, that doesn't mean he's telling the players that everybody, we didn't do it. We've done enough, and, we should have won the game, and, you can't do anything better, because he's definitely going to get into them and tell them that they should have done this and that. But there's always going to be an element of, they don't want us to have this, and I think it's good. And I have not seen a manager that's good and great that does not have that mentality. Yeah, sometimes, there's the oddball out there, like an Ancelotti, who's always cool and all this kind of stuff. But in general, most big managers, big six managers, whatever you want to call them, best managers, they're arrogant and they lose it on the sideline and have a little bit of an attitude. And that's just what it is. Early on in the season, we saw Tuchel and Conte grab each other's hands and almost WWE wrestle each other. And it was like celebrated. People loved it because it was two managers that they respect. Arteta does something and he shows some passion and he needs to calm down. And it's only because he's a new manager and they don't feel like he has the right to do that yet. But if he doesn't do that, the fans will not believe in him. So fuck it. Do what you want. I don't care. Some Arsenal fans don't like it and feel like it's cringy, but I've never really seen an Arsenal fan feel like that's going to translate to the players and that's going to be what derails the title challenge. I just don't think it is. Amira says, managers going berserk happens all the time. Arteta's been like that from day one. There's a time and a place for it, and at home, I'm 100% for it. Just don't do it in tough away games like Anfield last season. The other part of this as well is that Arteta was criticized for telling the players every single pass to make when he first got in. I remember that it was, why does he sit down? It's going to show the players that he doesn't trust them. He shouldn't have trusted them. They had no room to be trusted. That group of players that he came in to manage needed him to tell them every single pass to make. Every pass. Pass there. Do this. Press now. Do this. He had to do that. He doesn't do that as much because he trusts these players. But early on in his tenure, those people that have never coached in their lives, just pundits that have played, whatever, I don't care, were saying that he shouldn't be telling the players what to do, basically. Trust them. Trust who? Socrates? Mustafi? Trust them? For what? Like, they did not deserve to be trusted. Players he has now, he trusts them a little bit more, but that's just how Arteta's always been. He kicks every ball. He heads every ball. He takes every kick. He does everything. And I think he also said that if he's not willing to show the players that he's 100% committed, why wouldn't they be 100% committed? And that's his way of showing that he's committed. And players still want to come here. Players want to sign new deals. Players are improving. So as far as I'm concerned, he's not doing anything that's hindering the club. You know, this mindset that he needs to sit down and shut up is just so ridiculous. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Let's see. It took a long time though, Jess. The fans have little patience. Austin says facts. James says, I effing love what Arteta did, and I hope he does it in away games as well. Personally, I didn't really believe the whole Anfield thing. Like, I just think they turned it up on us and we were not good enough in that moment. You know, we had Sambi and Tavares and a team that was just so green, you know, and devoid of we just didn't have like the same level of confidence that we do now. And so any little thing that they could say besides just the team wasn't good enough, it was like, okay, well, he hyped up Anfield and all this kind of shit, whatever. I don't know. Jordan says, it's called passion. Remember, it's English commentators who eat bangers and mash or beans on toast every day. They are boring people. Cullen says players also talk really highly of Arteta. Jackson says him have to talk to the player as well. That is the job to win every game. Let's see. NT says he just wants us to be ruthless killers on the pitch. Hamed says they don't realize the importance of competition in a matter of play. They don't realize the importance of competition in a matter of players' agreement. Akal says most of the pundits didn't win anything during their playing time, so they don't know anything. And I think some of the players have said like he's intense, you know, this and that. So I'm sure that there are some players that are like, damn, shut up, just let me do what I need to do. But at the same time, they what he tells them to do gets them the right result. And so at the end of the day, even if it's annoying, it's working. And so I feel like that's all that really matters on the side of the players who may think that he's too intense or, you know, just let me do what I want to do. And then on the same thing of like pundits try to say that he shouldn't be doing that when it is working. So I don't know. I think the players do thrive off of they don't want us to do it. Last season, we just ran out of steam. We didn't have enough players. We had too many injuries and we didn't have the know-how. This season, I think they took it personally. And I think that's teams need that. Players need that. They need to feel like there's something that they need to feel that, you know, and I think he does a really good job at it, even if it annoys other people. And even as sometimes I'm like, Arteta, calm the fuck down, you know, but at the same time, I love it. James Bond says those supporters who said he hyped up Anfield are real cowards. I just disagree. You know, if you think that that's how it happened and that's how you saw the game, fair enough. I just didn't see it that way. I just think that they were a better team than us. They had the players that knew what to do. Once they scored that goal at halftime, it was just what it was. And we made some horrendous mistakes off of the back of halftime that game was dead and buried from there. So yeah, Cullen says if the players trust him and he gets result and he's getting the results, people just need to let him do his thing. I wouldn't want him to change. Exactly. And so I think there's just like this narrative that's going around and it comes up every time. It usually comes up around the time where we're fighting for something and there's a little bit of pressure and they want to try to find outside reasons for why we're dropping points or whatever like that. We dropped points against Newcastle because both teams nullified each other, and it was a 0-0. It didn't have anything to do with Arteta screaming and yelling on the fucking sideline. It was just we weren't quite as clinical as we needed to be, you know. And I think this is also where, you know, and we'll talk about this more on maybe Saturday morning, but I think Nketiah had a really good game, but I feel like it's the big games, like the game that we just played against Newcastle, where we need our best team to get it over the line. And a year ago, we lose that game 100%. We lose to Newcastle off of a last-minute corner or something like that. They had nothing to feed off of. They were never going to score a goal against us. But had Jesus been there, he probably would have had a little bit more of that cutting edge or the ability to at least, because in those low blocks, you need to have as many dribblers as possible. And I think Martinelli was just a little bit off of it. They're really double teaming Saka a lot, and we needed another dribbler. And Nketiah was doing a really, really good job, but it just wasn't enough. And that's where we're going to see how Arsenal deal with the not having Jesus is not going to affect us that much against Brighton or Brentford or Villa or West Ham. It's going to affect us in the games that are really tight against the best teams. And so that's where Nketiah is really going to show what his levels are. And we're going to see how badly we miss Jesus, because I feel like we missed him. We didn't completely capitulate like we did last season, but we dropped points. And we needed another attacker that had a little bit more. But that's not to say Nketiah didn't have a good game. False Nine Emil, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, I want my manager doing it. I agree. And so, yeah, that's just pretty much, you know, is what it is. But we're going to end the show there. An hour and 15 minutes. This was an amazing show. I really appreciate it. Every single one of you guys, all your comments, super chats. Colin, thank you so much for becoming a member. This was like the biggest stream in a long time. And like for a while, I was like, do people hate me? And like now I'm like, you guys are back and I love you guys so much. So thank you. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. We'll see what happens for Chelsea, Manchester City, and then we'll come back Saturday morning maybe and do a little bit of looking forward to the next couple of games. How do we want to set up in the FA Cup to make sure that players get rest? You know, what can happen over the next couple of weeks? What's the best case scenarios, worst case scenarios? Because there's a lot of the big teams are playing against each other in these next couple of weeks, and that can be really informative in terms of, is it a 2-horse race for the title? Is it a 4-horse race? Are we closer to a top 4 race? Are we going to sustain it? All that kind of stuff. So, and also there might be some transfer news. You never really know. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, get in the comments after and let me know what you guys thought about all the things that we spoke about on the show today. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.